นี่ค่ะก็วันนี้เราถึงบอสตันแล้วที่บอสตันเราจะหยุดที่นี่2 วันนะคะแล้วจุดสุดท้ายเราไปนิวยอร์ก Hi everyone, today is the Boston. We are in the Boston. We are down there and then we're gonna be here for 2 days. And let's see what we're gonna see around the Boston. ค่ะจากเมื่อกี้ที่เราเดินมาแล้วก็มาขึ้นรถโค้ชนะคะ Excursion นี่คือเป็น Panoramic Boston พาไปดู Boston รอบๆเมืองโดยมีไกด์เขาอธิบายไปด้วยกันอย่างที่บอกนะคะทริปเที่ยว Montreal นิวยอร์กจะพาให้คุณไปเหมือนคุณไปเที่ยวด้วยตัวคุณเองดังนั้นฟังไกด์พูดเหมือนคุณนั่งอยู่บนรถโค้ชแล้วกันนะคะเชิญฟังไปด้วยได้กันเลยกันค่ะ
The innovation and design district. A lot of companies that do computer design and design for corporate brochures and magazines and publications are in here. In the far end, there's one section for interior design, but now it's called the Innovation and Design Building. And they're putting in new shops and everything. Everything in Boston is being gentrified. The city is growing like crazy. And the reason is we are a city that has 5 industries, all of which are booming. First in importance in this city is medicine. Secondly, education. Third, scientific research, particularly in the robotics, computer engineering, and in the latest cures for all diseases. And people
จริงๆแล้วตอนนี้เนี่ยเราเพิ่งขับออกมาจากท่าเรือนะคะเรายังไม่ได้เห็นความอะไรมากมายในเรื่องของตึกนะคะเดี๋ยวเราพอไปถึงแล้วเรื่อยๆเนี่ยความเปลี่ยนแปลงจะเริ่มเห็นเยอะขึ้นเลยนะคะเดี๋ยวตามไปดูแล้วกันนะคะ
What was formerly mud flats. You need to know that 70% of downtown Boston is not on land that was here when the settlers first got here in 1630. On the right we have a large fishing industry center here. You see the ice trucks and here we have a microbrewery, Harpoon Brewery. Notice on the fence the little harpoon heads all across it. Then this tent-like building coming into view is called the Blue Hill Bank Pavilion. It's a sort of like an outdoor space where they have expos and sometimes they have the beer fest there. I don't know if you noticed there was a bank of porta potties there. So they have thousands of people. And now we are coming into what is now called the Seaport District. Look around you. With the exception of a few buildings, all this has been built since 2000. $100 million worth of buildings. And it is the new upcoming hot area. Lots of young people live here in very small condominiums. They work in the financial district, which is ahead of us. Or there are some companies such as John Hancock Insurance that's built an office building here. But it's generally young professionals. 40 restaurants amongst the finest in the city have opened here since that time, etc. On the right, you'll see the Boston Fish Pier, where every morning there is still an auction of fresh fish, a wholesale auction. Right there, it dates from 1914. I don't know if you saw a sign that said no name. There's a very famous restaurant there used to be called Nick's No Name. The building on the right here with all the flags is the Seaport World Trade Center. It's an expo center. Now, the No Name restaurant was opened by a Greek guy in the 1920s. His name was Nick. When I got here, they used to call it Nick's No Name. And the reason it was called No Name is because when people who knew he had a restaurant would ask him, hey, what's the name of your restaurant? He would say, No Name, come eat. And that's how it got its name, Nick's No Name. Now it's just called No Name, and it's still run by his family, his grandchildren. Going up there, way back there at the end of this pier, there used to be a very famous restaurant. It was called Anthony's Pier 4. And they had, they had photos as you entered of every star that ever there was, and politicians, etc. You notice the bus driver. Our bus driver's name is Kara. She's delightful and knowledgeable. And she knows that in Boston, if there's anybody waiting to cross the crosswalk, if they set a foot in the crosswalk and you don't stop, if you're seen, you get a $200 fine the first time. So it's very serious. Now, this particular group of buildings belongs to a company called Vertex, which is a research company, and they are partnered with the Boston City Schools. They have classes for certain students whom they're trying to interest in a career in science. So it's very successful. Another building that we're going to pass to the right very soon is a red brick building, which I'll point out. You have to look down the street. That's the Joe Moakley Federal Courthouse. And it was in that building that two trials recently of great renown were held. The trial of Whitey Bulger, the head of the Irish Mafia in New York, in Boston, who was convicted of 19 murders. And also, you remember the attempt on the marathon in 2013? All right, the younger of the Tsarnaev brothers, the one who actually survived, was tried here, and he was tried on federal charges. The federal government still has the death penalty, and even though the citizens were Massachusetts citizens in the jury, who, in a state where we don't have the death penalty, nonetheless, he was convicted and sentenced to death. Of course, the appeals will last 10, 12 years. But a lot of people were surprised that Massachusetts citizens would vote the death penalty. But of course, it was a very unusual and frightening experience for the entire city. So there it is. You can see that red brick building. That's the courthouse. Now, immediately, we're crossing the Fort Point Channel, which is an inner channel. Bridges were thrown across it for the first time in 1890, and it was developed as an industrial area. But everybody look to the left. See the red painted building? Everyone see that on the left? Notice the old ship on that side. That is the Beaver, and there's one exactly like it, or very similar, on the other side, the Eleanor. Those are replicas of two of the three ships that were boarded during the famous or infamous Boston Tea Party. That's the Boston Tea Party Museum, and a ticket is about $25. It's an excellent museum, and you get to go aboard the ships and everything. This is an old bridge which used to turn. You can see it turned on its axis. Well, it's frozen now, and it would cost so much money to take it down that for the time being, it's just there. Next to it, you see James Hook Lobster with the lobster weather vane. They ship about 50,000 pounds of lobster a day. Now we are on Atlantic Avenue, of course, which borders the Atlantic Ocean. There's a big hotel on the right with an enormous arch in the middle. That's the Boston Harbor Hotel. The land was bought from the city, and the city put a condition on it. All the bathrooms and public rooms on the first floor are open to the public. So you can go in and use their bathroom or sit in one of their chairs, and you don't have to be at the hotel. So it has a Ferris, not a Ferris wheel, a carousel. Some have nice green spaces where people in good weather can sunbathe. There are even some with lawn chairs, Adirondack chairs. Across from here on the water to the right, you see the tower of our airport, Logan International Airport. That airport is very close to Special Name. Boston has 37 of them. So what they did was they took a few of them, they flattened them, they used the earth and rock to join them together by landfill, and that's how the airport was created. So it's on landfill as well. To the left, we have a very tall tower. That tower with the 4 clocks on it is the Customs Tower. You'll be seeing it in a little while. The Customs House Tower that was added to the Customs House of 1847 in 1914 during the period of our height of our immigration. To the right is the Boston Aquarium. You'll see a lot of granite buildings. I'll explain in a little while what that's all about. Downstate here to the right, State Street to the right, is the remnant of a quay that is called Long Wharf in the 18th century. And here we have a park called Christopher Columbus Park. It's only named Christopher Columbus Park because Christopher Columbus never got anywhere near here as when the park was created. Now we also have, since this area has recently, since World War II, in fact, since the Big Dig opened up the eastern part of the city to foot traffic, people didn't want to go under that highway, which had broken bottles and homeless people and chain link fences. But once that was put underground, this got open, this whole area got open to foot traffic, and now we have an influx of young professionals in what were formerly immigrant apartments. And there are 110 Italian restaurants in this neighborhood. Isn't that something? Here's another Union Wharf, named for the Union Army and the Union. Battery Wharf is named because as early as 1650 there was a battery of guns right here at the end of the wharf. And those guns were still in place during the War of 1812. And on Battery Wharf now there are very fancy condos and a 5-star hotel. One of the streets in the North End where a lot of people live. Notice the decorations. Red and green and white are the colors of the Italian flag. This is not therefore Christmas decorations. In fact, we have, now we're going to slow down, very slowly. There is a street there with an arrow sign pointing to this street. Look to the left there and you are going to get a glimpse of the steeple of the Old North Church where the lanterns were hung on the night. There it is. Everybody get to see it? That's where the lanterns were hung according to Paul Revere's orders. Paul Revere didn't hang them. Now we're going to continue slowly. Look opposite to the other side of the river, whereas Boston was ever since the Tea Party. You see the 3 masts, the white mast with the black rigging of the USS Constitution, the oldest commissioned warship in the world, still afloat and part of a navy. It was built in 1797. It's completed. It's known as Old Ironsides as well. And now everybody look beyond to the left and get a glimpse right on a hill across the water. Can you see it all? That's the Bunker Hill Monument, the first major monument, not to individuals who fought in the Revolution, but to the Revolution itself. And each of the stones weighs 6 tons. The first commercial in barges and dragged up to the top of the hill. That battle was on June 17, 1775. Virtually 2 months after Lexington and Concord. Lexington and Concord were April 19th, 1775. That's when the Revolution began. On the corner here, there used to be a very large wooden tank held together by iron bands and bolts. And in it there was sugar cane. That 19, we take a left here. The temperature rose 20 degrees and the gas that was produced expanded with the heat. The bolts shot out, the whole thing collapsed, and a wave of molasses 8 feet tall enveloped this area, and that is known as the Great Boston Molasses Flood. 19 people killed, however, and numerous horses and other animals, because not every, trucks and stuff like that, many of them, big vehicles, were still hauled by horse. So now we're coming on to a street that's called Surface Road, and we're actually going to go by Quincy Market and the shuttle stop. This is a good way of doing it so you can see. All right? Now, before we get there, I just mentioned horses, right? So we have a huge market here, open on Friday and Saturday, with outdoor stands. It's a produce market now. They're selling fish, and it's called Haymarket. Why is it called Haymarket? Because its first use was as a market where they sold hay for horses and cows. And it's right where all those trucks are, right in front of us to the right here, beginning at Hanover Street. Very, very famous. But it's still called Haymarket. There's no hay as it's being sold. Now, you see, middle of the 1700s, the second most important port in the British Empire. Once again, you see more granite-faced buildings. Now, on the left, there's a building with a flag that's all granite, and it's done in this, what's known as the Greek Revival style. The Greek Revival style was contemporary with the granite style. This was the courthouse, the customs house of 1847. Everybody see that? And then in 1914, that big tower was added on the top of it. But this tells us the dock ended here in 1847. So everything behind us is landfill. And you see the building way up ahead, that little brick building? That's where the royal governor and his administration governed the colony from. And that building dates from 1713. It belongs to the city, and it is the oldest official government building in the entire United States. 1713. And the dock, this long wharf that I was telling you about, went all the way up this street just and ended about 50 yards before that building. Now, in front of that building, one of the two major events in the run-up to the Revolution occurred, and that was the Boston Massacre of March 5th, 1770, when the group, the Sons of Liberty, which organized the revolution and was headed by Samuel Adams, whose name you know from the beer, organized themselves to protest the Stamp Act, the first of the many intolerable acts that the British passed to tax the colonists. And that was in 1765. And within 10 years, the Sons of Liberty, taking advantage of all the mistakes of the British, changed the viewpoint of the majority of Boston citizens, who in 1765 were proud to consider themselves English and part of the greatest empire or country in the world at that time, sort of like Americans feel today. They were British and proud of it. They were British and they were very proud of it. And the majority did not want to leave the British Empire. But by 1775, because of some foolish mistakes the British made and the fact that the Sons of Liberty took advantage of them, that point of view changed. And so the balcony that you see there is the balcony from which the Declaration of Independence was first read to the citizens of Boston on July 18th, 1776. And you need to know that, of course, is 2 weeks after it was signed in Philadelphia. It took that long to get it. Look in the sidewalk, right in front of this building, you'll see a round circle of stones. That's the official marker for the Boston Massacre of March 5th, 1770. Citizens were protesting the death of a young man shot by a British soldier without orders. And on the second day, one of the soldiers, being, provoked with rotten tomatoes and stuff like that, fired into the crowd. The others followed suit without orders again, and 5 people were killed, 9 wounded. And incidentally, our second president, John Adams, reluctantly accepted to defend them, because according to the British system of law and justice, everyone is entitled to a trial by jury and to representation. And he took that very unpopular act out of principle and defended them and actually won the trial. Now, past this modern building on the right, there is a curiosity of the city, And if you break it down left onto Tremont, 2 syllables, TRE means 3 and MONT means hills in Latin. So it's our peninsula on which Boston was founded, which was all of 775 acres, had 3 hills. Now we're going to go slowly here because one thing after the other follows so fast. On the left we have King's Chapel. Obviously we don't have a king. Why is it called King's Chapel? Because this was the site of the church that was built for the royal governor, the British officers and merchants who came here not seeking religious freedom, but who came here to govern the colony and make their fortune. The Omni Parker House, the first luxury hotel in the United States. This is the 5th building. The Last Hurrah, the restaurant where Jack Kennedy had his bachelor party. You've heard of Parker House rolls? And the Boston cream pie, invented there, pie. On the right now, everybody, we are passing the holy ground of the American Revolution. This is the place where 3 signers of the Declaration of Independence, Samuel Adams, the head of the Sons of Liberty, right there, that's that very tall monument to the extreme left. So, this is the 3rd oldest cemetery in Boston, opened in 1650, the second was 1659, and the first was 1630. This is really, in some ways, who was the head of the Continental Congress that published the Declaration of Independence. And, you know, Americans know that he's the guy with the big signature, so that George III could read it without his spectacles. In other words, he was thumbing his nose at him, saying, yeah, I know this is treason, but I'm not a park, called Boylston Street. That's it. Then the trolleys came out from the ground and proceeded down to the west. There's a bust of Lafayette here in this stone marker. Lafayette visited the city in 1825 for his triumphal return to the city, and he was invited to lay the cornerstone of the Bunker Hill Monument. Now, do we have any Masons here? No, nobody's a member of a Masonic Lodge. The first Masonic Lodge in the United States is on the corner of the place where we're going to turn. We're turning right, it's on the opposite side of the street on the left, and you'll see there's a mosaic there, blue with a beaver and other Masonic symbols. And then, I also want you to notice what's being done in the city here. Here, when they build new buildings, most of the time, we don't tear down. We repurpose a building. In other words, we gut it and modernize it completely on the inside, and then we finish it off. And you will notice, if you look at the 1st and 2nd floor, that is the original stone of the Little building, which was built at the end of the 19th century. But if you look above that, you will see that there is new stone being put in place to replicate what was there before. So on the outside, this building will look very much like it did when it was first built, but on the inside, it will be a completely modern office building. And here on the left, the Grand Lodge of the Masons of Massachusetts, founded in 1733. And there are the 2 stone cabins that mark the 2nd of the 2 subway stops on the 1st subway line in the United States. On the Boston Common, there is set aside another cemetery, and there are many British soldiers buried in this cemetery, some of whom lost their lives from illness. They were here for 2.5 years. They lost their lives because, you know, some got sick, especially during the winter time. Others fought at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Queen, the Boston Common, the oldest public park in the United States, and on the left we have the Boston Public Garden, which is the first botanic garden in the United States. Your tour says you're going to be passing 7, and it sits on landfill. there was a huge bay behind Boston, behind the peninsula, called Back Bay. And in 1837, they filled in this much land and created this park. Now, 20 years later, they started filling in on the other side, the west side of the park, and that went on for 43 years and added more than a square mile to the city. And that neighborhood is called Back Bay, and it is one of our most prestigious. Now, I want everybody to look to the left, look low, and imagine you're looking ahead of you to where the hour handle on a clock would say 11. Look for 3 wooden benches, in front of which, I can see them right now, there are 8 ducklings, statues of 8 ducklings and a mother duck. Can you all see that? All right. Why are they there? Because in 1941, a man named Robert McCluskey wrote a children's book called Make Way for Ducklings. It tells the story of the mother duck who gave birth to her children at the other end, her ducklings, at the other end of the street in front of us, Charles Street, which is about a quarter of a mile long, and decided to march them down this street to the park where she could see them grow in that pond and supervise them so they would grow up. Now, what does this cause? It causes like a spontaneous circus with people running out of the stores and leaning over the windows and policemen madly trying to direct traffic. And every Mother's Day that is reenacted with children dressed as ducklings. Now, beyond this tree to the right, you may recognize a building after that awning. That building is Cheers. Remember the show? And that building was featured at the beginning of every show. Now we're going to be turning left onto Arlington Street. The streets in this new neighborhood, Back Bay, the streets run north to south, and the neighborhood extends to the west. The first is Arlington. The second is Berkeley. The third is Clarendon. In other words, alphabetical order. Dartmouth, Exeter, Fairfield, Gloucester, Hereford, and finally Mass Ave. Look down this street. This is a residential street. Look at it, it's right in the heart of the city. The houses on this block date from between 1860 and 1870. And this is another one of our very prestigious neighborhoods. And as we cross what is the widest avenue in Boston, the Commonwealth Avenue, coming right ahead, nonetheless, I want you to look across the street at this beautiful public garden, and you will see an equestrian statue who managed to liberate the city of Boston from British control without firing a single shot. If you've read a wonderful history book called 1776, it tells the story of the first year of the Revolution. And in that story, in that history book, there is a lot of material which is related to how Washington had cannons, large cannons, which were captured from the British at Fort Ticonderoga in upstate New York, sailed down the Hudson, sailed up the Connecticut River, and dragged across from the Connecticut River to Boston in the middle of the winter, and then how he placed them high on a hill overlooking the city, and how when the next morning the British troops who occupied the city woke up, they had these huge cannons staring them in the face. So they had to sue to be allowed to evacuate by ship. And that took place, coincidentally, on March 17th, which is, of course, St. Patrick's Day in this city because we have so many Irish. But it is also a legal holiday in Boston called Evacuation Day. Here's the statue of Washington. And we have some trees beginning to turn. Oh, wait, just wait. Where do you go from here? On the cruise. Oh, I see. So this Fifth Ave. Now, I also want you to notice this magnificent is a Protestant church, always was a Protestant church. But every person who lived in this part of the city wanted their church to be very special, to show their culture and their sense of history. Now, halfway down the block, you see this other big church? Second one, also a Protestant church, different denomination, obviously, with very interesting stained glass windows. These windows were the type that were made in the United States by the Tiffany Studio, by other artists, and towards the end of the 19th century. They're not transparent, as are the cathedral stained glass windows in France. The building on the other side, the red brick building, was once a very exclusive men's shop called Louis of Boston. They now have one shop in a wealthy suburb called New. So this street, which is now a commercial street, was developed first as a residential street. There's Max Mara. I don't know how they managed to sneak into Victoria's Secret. I don't think it's quite the same standard. And on the right, the building with the three blue awnings, that's Ralph Lauren. And we will go straight ahead. Kara's doing a wonderful job, don't you think? She's absolutely perfect. We had a great discussion. We discussed the whole route beforehand so that we could be wasting our time. The building with the flag here, Massachusetts state flag, and the American flag is the Genealogical Society of New England. Traces the old families back, the Cabots, the Lowells, the Warrens, the Marshalls, the Gores, the Lyons, etc. You know, we have a little shoe store. I don't keep up with all this. On the left, just beyond where this truck is parking, there is the building that used to be the Singer sewing machine building. And notice all the old sewing machines on both sides of the window.
And above too.
It's cute. I think you'll also notice how clean the city is. A great effort is made particularly for the parts of the city that are very heavily seen by tourists. This building on the left is the only example I know in the city of strictly Moorish Spanish Arab architecture. There's another big church there. We passed another one block to the right. Now we're going to turn left at this next corner. But you need first to look at the last building to the right. This former Exeter Street Theater, now a Montessori school, is done in a style of architecture called Richardsonian Romanesque. Notice the rounded Roman arches, the two-tone stone, the little columns with a sort of leaf and vine motifs, the geometric patterns. You're going to see the church, which was built between 1872 and 1877, Trinity Episcopal Church, where this style was first created by the architect Henry Hobson Richardson. And that style spread across the country. Anytime you go into a major building that has a rounded yellow line is, with blue letters facing the other direction that say finish, because that's where the cameras are. There it is. So everybody, 1, 2,
จำบอสตันที่มีระเบิดเกิดขึ้นได้ไหมคะนี่เขาชี้ให้ดูแล้วค่ะนี่ค่ะสถานที่เกิดระเบิดเดี๋ยวดูตรงซ้ายนี่ค่ะนี่เลยนะตรงนี้ละค่ะที่เกิดระเบิดที่เขาออกstart วิ่งเขาพยายามที่จะบอกนะคะ
Magnificent church. This church is a wonderful example of Italian Gothic, flamboyant Gothic. But the church was founded in 1670. The congregation is one of the oldest central tower of the Trinity Episcopal Church. This is the one which launched this style, which was shown for the first time here and completed in 1877. And it sits on 4,000 tree trunks dug into the gravel and sand with which this whole neighborhood is filled.
ค่ะตอนนี้ก็รถโค้ชนะคะก็มาจอดเป็นจุดแรกนะคะหลังจากที่เราขับรถชมเมืองไปเรื่อยๆแล้วนะคะก็จะมาจอดอยู่ที่โบสถ์เพราะว่าโบสถ์สวยนะคะแล้วก็มันจะมีตึกที่ตรงกันข้ามมันเป็นคอนทราสต์ตึกที่แบบไฮ แบบสูงสุดๆเลยสูงมากๆนะคะกระจกแล้วมันเป็นการสะท้อนของโบสถ์เข้าไปในกระจกนะคะซึ่งทำให้เราได้ภาพอาร์ตนี่ดูสิคะตึกสูงจริงๆนะคะเนี่ยนะคะแล้วดูความตรงข้ามนะคะมันความเป็นประวัติศาสตร์กับความทันสมัยมันอยู่ตรงข้ามกันมันทำให้เกิดอาร์ตฟอร์มของความที่น่าสนใจนะคะก็ลองไปดูค่ะเป็นยังไงเดี๋ยวลองไปดู Oh look at thatเสร็จแล้วค่ะคราวนี้เราแวะไปอีกจุดหนึ่งนะคะจุดเที่ยวต่อไปคือตลาดควินซี่ที่มีชื่อเสียงของบอสตันนะคะแต่ก่อนที่จะไปถึงแน่นอนเราไปชมแหล่งเที่ยวแหล่งที่น่าสนใจระหว่างทางไปกับไกด์แล้วกันค่ะ
In the United States, this is the second. This is a monument to the first regiment of free blacks. For 104 years, it was our city hall. You should see the monstrosity that's now in its place. Now, and this is another example of a style.
มาร์เก็ตแล้วนะคะที่จะต้องมาโอเคนั่นคือมาร์เก็ตเวนซีมาร์เก็ตนะคะที่ควรจะต้องมาเราจะเข้าไปเปล่าเราก็ยังไม่รู้เลยตลาดควินซี่เป็นตลาดที่มีอาหารเยอะมากๆนะคะก็มีหลายๆประเภทสมัยโฮมเมดแบบสมัยโบราณหรืออะไรก็แล้วแต่นั่นคือสมัยเมื่อก่อนนะคะเพราะว่าพอดีได้มีโอกาสถามคนที่เขาเคยมานี่เป็นครั้งที่2ครั้งที่3ก็บอกว่าเปลี่ยนไปเยอะเมื่อก่อนเนี่ยมานี่แบบว่าไม่เหมือนที่อื่นเลยนะคะอยากจะกินเหมือนบ้านเราอะขนมโบราณเนี่ยมันมีแต่เดี๋ยวนี้เนี่ยที่ตรงเนี้ยมันสะดวกตรงที่มันเป็นแถวแล้วมันเดินไปเลยนะคะแต่ปัญหามันคืออาหารเนี่ยมันกลายเป็นคอมเมอร์เชียลแล้วนะคะมันมีอะไรที่มันแตกต่างแต่ว่าเราก็มาค่ะในเมื่อเขาบอกว่าควินซี่เป็นมาเก็ตมาทั้งทีต้องมาให้ถึงก็มาแล้วกันแต่สิ่งนี้คือสิ่งที่การเปลี่ยนแปลงอย่างว่านะคะคอมเมอร์เชียลกับอะไรมาเจอเข้าไปมันก็ต้องเป็นไปตามที่เจเนอเรชันที่เปลี่ยนไปนะคะ